Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Yai, 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 lai, 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 lai. Yai, lai, 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 lai. Yai, lai, lai, lai. Yai, lai, 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 lai. Yai, lai, 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 lai. Yai, lai, lai, lai. Page 24. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem leShalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu ni leShalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem leShalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Shabbat Shalom. It's a pleasure to welcome you who are joining us in person and those of you who are here with us online. We are celebrating the first Shabbat after the summer solstice. We're into summer. The longest day of the year was just a couple of days ago. It's amazing how our ancestors experience time differently than us, and that we turn on a light when it's dark, we light candles, and we don't think much about using them for light. But in the ancient world, light was something to be celebrated. So when those long days of summer came along for them, for sure, it was a time of great recognition and celebration. And later in our service, we'll stop at a prayer called Ma'ariv Aravim, which talks about the setting sun. It's that moment, we're not there yet, but it's a moment when the sun begins to disappear and the stars come out in the east and the sun fades into the west, and they called it the blending of the evenings. And there was acute awareness of when that would fall, whether it was the days were long and days were shorter, and that prayer recognized the cycles both of the sun and the seasons, and of course that's what gives us our 7-day cycle that ends with Shabbat. So it's a pleasure to join with you and to have our cantorial intern Andrew Pascal here with us. As we continue with our service, the candle lighting for Shabbat, I'd like to invite Lara Katz and her family to join us up here, if you would, please.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. We continue on page 10 with Shabbat Malkah. Hachama merosh ha'ilanot nistalka bo v'netzei likrat Shabbat hamalka hine hi yoredet hakdosha habrucha ve'ima malachim tzeva shalom umenucha boi boi hamalka boi boi hamalka shalom aleichem shalom aleichem shalom aleichem malachei hashalom.
The sun on the treetops no longer as seen. Shabbat is marked by the setting of the sun. We continue on page 20 with Lecha Dodi. In the ancient days, in the medieval times, when this poem was written, they would turn and greet Shabbat as the sun set behind them. They'd face the east and watch the sky darken as Shabbat descended and greet it like a bride to be welcomed after a chuppah. Page 20.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela Shamor v'zachor b'ribor echad Hishmiyanu el hamuchad Adonai echad hu shemo echad Leshem u'tiferet v'litzila Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha ki hi mekor ha'bracha Merosh mikedem nesucha sof ma'aseh b'machashava techila Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela Boi v'shalom ateret bala Gam besimcha uvtzohola Toch emunei am segula Boi chala Lecha Dodi likrat kala penei Shabbat nekavela At nekabela.
We continue with the invitation to pray on page 28, called to worship the Baruch Hu.
Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Baruch Hu et Adonai ha-mevorach. Baruch Adonai ha-mevorach.
Please be seated.
This next song/prayer is in honor of the end of Pride Month. This is Make Them Hear You, a song from the musical Ragtime, written by Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty. And this piece is about fighting for justice and hearing those, making sure the voices of the voiceless are heard. So I encourage everyone to meditate on those around us who need their voices to be heard. Go out and tell our story, let it echo far and wide. Make them hear you, make them hear you. How justice was our battle and how justice was denied. Make them hear you, make them hear you. And say to those who blame us for the way we chose to fight, that sometimes there are battles that are more than black or white. And I could not put down my sword when justice was my right. Make them hear you. Page 34. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Go out and tell the story to your daughters and your sons. Make them hear you. make them hear you. And tell them in our struggle we were not the only ones. Make them hear you. Make them hear you. Your sword can be your sermon or the power of the pen. Teach every child to raise his voice, and then, my brothers, then will justice be demanded by 10 million righteous men. Make them hear you. When they hear you, I'll be near you again. Page 36. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvechol nafshecha uvechol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom al levavecha Veshinantam levanecha, veribarta baham, beshivtecha habevetecha, uvlechtecha vaderech, uvshochbecha uvekumecha, ukshartam leot al yadecha, vehayu letotafot beinenecha, uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha. Leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim le'Elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem emet.
You know, your song for justice, connected to the Shema, leads us beautifully into the Michamocha. We sing a song of our own redemption. We celebrate the parting of the sea, the story we tell of the Israelites' passage from slavery to freedom to redemption. And the message, of course, is to be grateful for every time Jews have been redeemed, whether it's in the story of Egypt or whether it's from the clutches of oppressors of nations all around the world. We celebrate that story of redemption, but also that comes along with it is the recognition that if we can celebrate our own freedom, and if we do celebrate our own freedom, we have to also recognize that there are others who are still yearning for justice and for freedom and the right to be who they truly are. So when we sing the Michamocha, it's not just about us. It's about our responsibilities to recognize the needs, desires, the yearnings of others as well. It's on page 40, Michamocha.
Tehilot Osei Fele Nora Tehilot Osei Fele Lai 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 Yai Lai 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 Adonai Yimloch Leolam Va'ed Adonai Yimloch Leolam Va'ed Yai Lai Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai 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 Ad Adonai et Yaakov, ugalo miad chazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael.
This service is called Ma'ariv, which means evening, the coming of evening. So it should be no surprise that many of our prayers reflect on the fall of night. Hashkivenu, on page 42, is a bedtime prayer. It's a prayer that recognizes that with the setting of the sun comes with it the associated fear of darkness. So regardless of what era we live in, darkness still evokes a visceral internal fear in our human hearts. And so this prayer captures that and recognizes it and says, don't be afraid. Go to bed with the knowledge that you'll wake up, the sun will rise tomorrow, and that if you feel God's presence and God's protection and invoke that protection, you can trust in the night, trust in the darkness, and look forward to the light. Page 42.
Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim. Ushmor tzeiteinu, uroenu, lechayim ulshalom, me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu leshalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu lechayim.
A celebration of Shabbat on page 44 of Vishamru.
V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledorotam, berit olam, berit olam. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael, oti le'olam. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael, oti le'olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael, oti le'olam. Beini uvein bnei Yisrael, oti le'olam. V'shameru et bnei Yisrael HaShabbat, et HaShabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ברית עולם.
If you're with us in the sanctuary, you have a prayer book at home. On page 253, you'll see the Mishaberach. Below that prayer is a prayer. So the Mishaberach is a collective prayer. We join together. We wish for healing for those who are ill. We hold in mind those who might be dear to us and extend our wishes for healing. The prayer beneath that, the Birkat HaGomel, is what we say after we've been healed. It's recognition of the miracles of human life that allow us to be sustained both by the wondrous hands of doctors and also by the fortitude of our bodies and the Spirit of God that's within us. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shegamal lanu kol tov. Blessed you, Adonai, our God, sovereign in the universe, who has bestowed every goodness upon us. If you ever find yourself in synagogue and on this page and you've survived an illness and you are grateful for all that's brought you here, it's worth taking a moment to recite this prayer of gratitude for your well-being. We continue with the Mishaberach, also on page 253.
Mishaberach avoteinu mekor habracha ve'imotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
We continue with our time for personal prayer. The Amida begins with the meditation, those 6 words on page 46, and then continues through to page 62. You can, of course, read the Hebrew, read the transliteration of the Hebrew if you would like, or read the opposite page, the facing page, the left side, which has interpretive, reflective readings, poems inspired by the content of the Hebrew. I invite you to rise as you recite the Amida, and you can be seated when you're finished. You almost don't want the beautiful music to end if you're taking a moment to enter into your own space and the music sort of drifts over you. It's comforting, it's relaxing, it's soothing. It's what we need in this world these days. Imagine a technology that's so innovative that it changes human history forever. It's a technology that has the power to influence people's thoughts, and it holds such sway over people that it almost appears to be magical. It has the power to affect how past events are remembered. It can even influence the future by planting ideas in people's minds. It can induce certain behaviors. It can change what people believe, whether it's true or false. And it can change their moods. It can bring joy, it can create anxiety, it can bring alarm, it can induce despair. Imagine that technology. Now, at first, this technology is wielded by a select few who seem to understand its power and how to decipher its meaning. Most times, those holders of power use it for good. Sometimes they use it for evil means. So what's that technology? It's not what you might be thinking. It's the written word. Though literacy is universal in our days, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and certainly in the early times when writing was first invented, it was mysterious. It was indecipherable to the vast majority of the population. People could not read. It could capture thoughts. That was magic. And then someone could look at those symbols, wherever they were written, and turn them back into thoughts, tell you what someone had been thinking centuries ago, perhaps. It was written on clay tablets or the walls of temples. Words were written on objects. And when the object was worn by the bearer, it might give them special protection, or if something was written and dropped in someone's house, it could curse the house. Amulets with words inside of them were put on the doorposts of homes. Incantation bowls, and they've discovered, these archaeologists have dug them up, bowls with incantations written in a circle around the bowl, could protect or harm depending upon what was written with words in those bowls. Some writing was deemed sacred. It was the words of the gods. Only the specially initiated could receive that message, and they would turn what they heard into writing. And that writing was preserved from one generation to the next, magically. Kings recorded their words on stone pillars. They became eternal embodiments of the king's wisdom, power, and sometimes justice, the king's victories over nations, the king's losses sometimes. And the more ancient a text was, a written text, the more it was venerated. So the wisdom or the mythology of one generation became the sacred possession of subsequent generations. Enter onto the scene us, we Jews, the people of the book, the people of the written word. We immerse ourselves in texts even today that are hundreds of years old, thousands of years old. Their resonance, their influence, their significance, well, it continues to rebound for us. And so does the controversy brought by some of those words written into that ancient text. God's name, inscribed in those texts, spoken rarely, had even greater power once it was written down. If it was inscribed on a document, that document couldn't be destroyed. We have the Cairo Geniza, repository of documents where the holy text was written on them, sometimes not even God's names, but how much the more so if God's name was on the text, it was kept and put in the Geniza. It was etched into amulets. The mezuzah has words of Torah inside. It protected the home. It was marked, it could have been, the story goes, written on the forehead of a creature made of clay, and once written, that creature could come to life. At least that was the medieval mythology. Torah was ancient and mysterious. It was written, It elevated its holiness because it was the inscribed, as they believed, brought perceptions of infallibility because it was the initiated taking God's word, writing it down. The text is so sacred, we still keep it sheltered in a special spot in our sanctuary. When it comes to the congregation, we reach out and we touch it. It's written word. And we say the blessings before we read those words, as Laura, you're going to do tomorrow in synagogue. It took us over 2,500 years to recognize some truths about Torah that eluded our ancestors. We recognize today that they're the reflections of human interpreters, of human minds, products of history, often reflective of the heights of human accomplishment. Some of the principles in Torah we still aspire to achieve. And sometimes they reflect values, the words of Torah, that are contrary to our own, and we have to work through that. And so, because of modernity, our relationship with sacred text has changed because we see it as a product of history but still sacred. But recognizing that, and recognizing that our understanding of it has changed, we're willing to question it, to challenge it, to contextualize it, to reject it or to reframe it from our contemporary viewpoint. And yet we know still that for most religions, the power of that ancient word continues today, whether it be Torah, New Testament, or Quran, and that those words hold such sway over some believers that it can tragically breed intolerance, oppression, and violence, and even war. That's the power of the written word. So the written word, even today, ancient or modern, can truly still move mountains. Tell you about that to remind you of an ancient technology, because I want to talk about a modern technology right now that has equally more disruptive and more powerful, might have an equally more disruptive and more powerful effect even than the written word. And it's spreading right now before our eyes, and it also has mysterious origins. Even its creators aren't quite sure how it actually works. It's ubiquitous. We've all encountered it in a variety of platforms and formats. It has the capacity sometimes, and it can fool us to appear human. It appears to think when we engage, when we interact with this modern creation. And its qualities, those qualities of humanness, reflect its power and its danger in our generation. And at the same time, despite all this, we can't avoid it. We need it. It won't go away. It's vital. It can even be life-saving. But its power for harm cannot be understated. I'm talking about artificial intelligence. We have to recognize it. It's not the stuff of computer geeks or techies, folks. It's everywhere. It influences your internet searches. It's watching you. It records what you look for in previous searches. And if different people ask the same exact question, it can provide different answers based on their past searches and their profiles. It's been affecting your social media feed, your so-called news that appears when you open your web browser, for years. It's getting better and more powerful. It will drive our cars. It already drives some of them, not without controversy. You've already received letters and texts and emails that are generated by the brain of a computer. And it is, of course, the maddening encounter we have with customer service where it tries to interpret what we say and never quite gets it right, although you'll notice it's getting better than it used to be. It will, at some point, diagnose medical conditions, and perhaps it will even perform surgeries. It might even, well, actually, in some cases it does provide mental health counseling. I read today about how you can use artificial intelligence to be a life coach. Frightening. And most significantly, it can and it will edit and create videos. This is where it becomes important. It will write articles that appear to be news. It will retouch photos that now no longer we can count on as reflections of reality. It literally can put mouths in the words of public speakers. And most of us will not recognize its deception. But unlike the trajectory of written words that took us thousands of years to recognize and see it as a product of the human mind, we can't wait thousands of years for artificial intelligence, because History is accelerated in our time. Things happen much faster than they did in the ancient world. We've got to harness the power, recognize the danger, and be aware of the impact of artificial intelligence today. Karl Marx famously recognized the power of religion to lead and mislead, to comfort and disturb. Well, if religion could do that, computer brains are nuclear-powered opiates like that. It will change the way we work, it already has, the way we do business, the way we consume information, the way we interact with our world, and few of us will be aware of when it's happening and when we're experiencing it. And here's the truth also. Because profit often is the motive for those who use artificial intelligence. We can't trust them to take our best interests at heart, unless, of course, we're stockholders in the companies that are pushing out the artificial intelligence. We have to recognize that it will manipulate us, that it will exploit our gullibilities, that we will be duped if you haven't already been duped by artificial intelligence. But here's the good news, and there is some. We're not defenseless. We have resources. We have each other, and that's what we have to rely on. Because if we engage each other properly, we can at least work to insulate ourselves against some of the most pernicious effects of artificial intelligence. To avoid falling down that rabbit hole of misinformation, we need to check ourselves. To check ourselves not by looking for more artificial intelligence sources, but by talking to people, by asking our friends who don't think like us what they're finding, by comparing what they find in their different searches to what we find in our searches, and then seeking second and third opinions as well. Listening to others can shelter us and shield us. Because whether it's on your screen, your phone, your mailbox, you have to remember that if something doesn't make sense, or if it's too good to believe, it probably is something you shouldn't be believing. And as communities with power, we have to push for more regulation. We have to, because government is way behind on this one. Government has virtually dropped the ball. And left to their own devices, corporate America will not serve us well here. So I read an article in The Atlantic by Associate Editor Adrienne LaFrance, and thought it was particularly compelling, and she inspired me with her words, so I want to share what she wrote. A future in which overconfident machines seem to hold the answers to all of life's cosmic questions is not only dangerously misguided, but it takes away that which makes us human. In an age of anger and snap reactions and seemingly all-knowing AI, we should put more emphasis on contemplation as a way of being. Kind of what we do in here, stepping outside of the world and letting our brains work. She goes on. We should embrace an unfinished state of thinking, the constant work of challenging our preconceived notions, seeking out those with whom we disagree, and sometimes admitting that we still don't know the answers. In short, now these are my words, we can't afford to be complacent or lazy. We are being watched. And I don't mean by the cameras in this room, I mean by our internet engagement. So we have to be astute consumers of knowledge. And just as from the first days of the written word, it's incumbent upon all of us to be passionately committed to the pursuit of truth. Amen. A prayer for our nation on page 258. O guardian of life and liberty, this one was written by human hands, by the way. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wisdom of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion and help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit, as we say. Amen.
Avinu Shabashamayim, Tzor Yisrael v'goalo, Ba'arech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu.
Avinu Shabbat Shamayim, we ask you to bless the state of Israel, whose founding continues to inspire us with its promise of freedom, justice, equality, and understanding. Strengthen the hands of those who defend Israel's borders, its security, and its democracy. Stir in its leaders' devotion to the principles of liberty, of justice, of equality, of compassion. Open the minds and the hearts of its inhabitants to one another. May they turn to one another in understanding, in dignity, and in love. Then shall its light truly shine among the nations, and its boughs, like the olive branch, spread far in splendor, bringing life to all who sit under their shade, as we say. Amen. We continue with the Kiddish. Lara is going to come forward to lead with cantorial intern Andrew. And I'd like to invite Ashley, if you want to come up for the Kiddish and stand here with us, because Kiddish is all about celebrations, and we named babies today. Ariana, if you want to bring your family up with, we can all stand up here and celebrate. And I'll invite folks. Let's see, if you have a birthday that you celebrate or celebrating this week, would you please rise? Let's get our smachot in, our celebrations. If you're celebrating a wedding anniversary this week, perhaps. If there's some other cause for celebration, if you've had a graduation in your family that you want to celebrate, by all means, stand up. If you're happy to be alive, please stand up, join us. And let's recognize the joy that the Kiddish brings to our hearts as we celebrate with these little ones. What was her Hebrew name that was given to her? Ariel Nesach, beautiful. And what's your Hebrew name? Eliana? Liana. Oh, nice. Beautiful, beautiful. All right, here we go.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu. V'shabbat kodsho v'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit, ki hu yom tehila lemikra'e kodesh, zecher litziat Mitzrayim, kivanu v'acharta v'yotanu kidashta mikol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodeshecha v'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu, baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat lechaim.
We got sisters, cousins, aunts. We got it all going on up here. Mazel tov. Yeah, she can have some of its grape juice. That secret's out. All right. We continue with the Aleinu. It's on page 282.
Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כאויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא Ushemo, Ushemo, Ushemo Echad.
We are a community both in time, a community that draws itself together for Shabbat, for holidays, for celebrations, for learning. We're also a community that connects with the past. When we gather here, we gather with the souls and the spirits and the presence and the thoughts of those who have lived before us, and we know that their gifts, their lives, even sustain us to this day. And so when we recite the Kaddish, we rise traditionally, as you know, at particular times throughout the year to recall our particular loved ones. And it's not merely a matter of remembering the loss, it's about remembering the lives of what they lived to be, how they lived at their best, how we carry a bit of them within us. And that inspiration and that guidance creates community in the present, community with the past. So if you are observing, first and foremost, in the first 30 days of mourning for a loved one, I'd like to invite you to rise. If you're in the first year of mourning for a loved one, I invite you to rise. If you're observing the anniversary of the death of a loved one, the yahrzeit, please rise. And if it is your custom to stand during the Kaddish in community, I invite you to do so as you're able, as we recite these words on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. V'alma divrach u'tei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chai echon u'vyomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. V'agala u'vizman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam ol'almei al-maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei. V'yithadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shmei d'kudisha b'richu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'ama v'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shamaya, v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel, to which we say, amen. So as always, we are grateful to all those who make this moment possible, both the folks who are in front of you, our incredible musicians who bring their spirit of joy to us every Shabbat, but also those who are behind the scenes, our tech crew, our photographers, our producers, all the folks who make the scenes appear on your screens if you're watching us. We appreciate their hard work. And of course, our security folks and our maintenance people who are here always to make sure everything works, everything's set for you when you walk in, so it's a flawless experience. We are blessed to have a wonderfully committed crew of people who see this not just as a job, but really as a labor of the heart. And we create our own community of professionals here at WISE because of the commitment that we all have to doing what we can to make your experience that much better. So on behalf of all of them, Shabbat Shalom to all of you, Shabbat Shalom to all of you who are watching us, and we wish you a good week, a week of health and joy of summer, and maybe a little more sunshine in the days than we've been getting here in Southern California, so that you can enjoy our beautiful California summers. We end with Oseh Shalom, words on the bottom of 294, our continuing prayer for peace.
Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.